In Last Epoch, you'll be swimming in loot drops before you even make it to the endgame. White rarity gear drops will probably get pretty annoying early on in your campaign. But luckily, Last Epoch has an amazing loot filter built right into their game that you can use to filter out all the crap and get excited for the good stuff. Of course, you can check out this loot filter guide in written form on my website, dpscheck.gg, but in this video, I'm going to go into much more detail with visual examples of how the loot filter works. I'll also show you how easy it is to import a filter from your favorite build website or YouTube video description. Last Epoch's loot filter allows you to remove loot from your display if you don't want to see it. So if you're running around in the campaign, you won't see items on the ground if they're not part of your loot filter. You will notice a little hint of a loot beam so that you know loot is dropping, but it's hidden from your view because your loot filter filters it out. This means that you'll only see amazing gear that is personally tailored to your class or build. And as you go through the campaign and start leveling up, you can make your loot filter more specific as you know what you're going for and you have better loot in your stash. So we're going to start out really broad, just getting rid of those white drops, and we're going to get really specific as we level up and know exactly what we're looking for. And in Last Epoch's loot filter, you can recolor items or even emphasize them in all caps to make them stand out from the rest. And personally, I love that part because then you can get really excited when you see those items drop. I usually make them bright magenta and all caps so that I know this is the perfect item for my build. And you don't have to worry because, like I said, the gear you hide is always going to be able to be found again. All you have to do is switch to no filter, or you can even hold X on the keyboard to see the loot temporarily. And this is actually a great way to test your rules when you first start out, so you don't have to worry about screwing something up and then missing a ton of loot. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more Last Epoch guides. If you have any suggestions, leave them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you guys want to see next. So first, let's go ahead and open up the loot filter menu in Last Epoch and take a look at the interface. So this is me pretty early on in leveling. I think it was the second area that you go to. And as you can see, I've gotten a lot of white and blue drops so far. They call them normal and magic in Last Epoch. White is normal and blue is magic. But it's about the time when you're going to want to start a loot filter. To pull up the loot filter in Last Epoch, you can hit Shift F, or you can open it in the settings under Gameplay, Manage Loot Filters. So when you first open up the window, you're going to see the loot filter basics pop up. This is telling you that there's kind of an order of operations to the rules. It doesn't really tell you too much about how to use the loot filter. It just shows you that you create rules, you order them, and rules that are located higher in the list are going to take priority over rules that are listed below. So definitely keep that in mind when you're making your rules, because you can use this to say hide all magic rarity. However, if that magic rarity has this particular affix, like increased skeleton mage damage, then you want to see the blue. When you click on create a filter, you're also going to see the option to import or paste from your clipboard. For right now, we're going to create a brand new loot filter because I want to show you guys the basics, the very bare minimum of creating a filter so that you can see how that's done. And so then when you import filters from other places, you're going to be able to read and understand what the rules are in case you want to change any. Okay, so let's back up there. First, we're going to name our loot filter, and keep in mind that the loot filter dropdown is account wide. So all of your classes are going to see it, whether you're on the seasonal realm or the legacy. I'm assuming that those are going to be separate, but in any case, you want to put your class or mastery name there so that you know what build this loot filter is for. And you can always duplicate the loot filter if you create a generic one, and then you want to make it more specific for your class. So the first thing we're going to do is name it and give it an icon, and then you're going to start creating the filter by adding a rule. The very first rule that I always add on every single build is to hide normal rarity. That's going to get rid of those whites for you initially so that you can run through the campaign and not just be inundated with all of this white rarity loot. So that is the first one, and definitely the most simple. You could add magic to this once you get later on in the game and you don't want to see blues. However, you can put blues into the forge, add a rune of discovery, and improve it to rare quality. So I don't think blues should really be written off just yet. However, the next rule that I always put into my builds, if I am playing a class where I am pretty sure I'm going to be using a wand, staff, or maybe I know I'm going to be using swords and daggers, I pretty much know the weapon type I'm going to be using on my class, then I'll go ahead and hide by item type. So you can go into the one-handed, two-handed, your offhands, and you can check all the ones that you don't want to see. This is going to filter out a lot of weapons that you know you're not going to use anyway. I normally play Acolyte and Mage, so I go in and I hide all the axes, maces, spears, everything I know I wouldn't use, and that's going to filter out a lot of irrelevant drops for you. The other one that I put in here on almost all of my loot filters is to hide when it's a different class. So I go in and I check all the classes except for mine and except for any, and then put that in there as well. Now keep in mind, if you are part of the merchant faction, you may not want to put this rule in there because you're going to want to see really good drops for other classes because then you can sell them at the bazaar. However, because of how the loot filter works in Last Epoch, you can put rules above that one that will actually show you really good loot drops for specific classes, even though you have previously hid all of the loot drops for other classes. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is how to select affixes that you want to see. Now affixes, there are prefixes and suffixes on all of the gear in Last Epoch. The prefixes are things like your intelligence, dexterity, your damage, spell damage, etc. And your suffixes are going to be more like resistances. There are some specific things like health, hybrid health, and other defenses, but you're going to want to go in and recolor all the gear that has affixes you really want to see. So I go in and I just look through all of the affixes. You can use the search bar at the top to search for specific things, like if you wanted to do a bleed build, or if you wanted to look for necrotic damage, stuff of that nature. You're going to go through and select all of it. And then once that's done, you want to recolor this rule so that you can see those drops in a different color. We're still going to have magic rarity blue drops on the ground because we haven't fully hid all of those. However, this is going to recolor magic and rare items to show you if there are those affixes that you really want. Now for me, I am also going to say that it must have at least 2 of these affixes on the same item because I am putting all the resistances as well. So I don't want anything with like physical resistance to show up as a different color. I want it to have at least 2 of those affixes. And of course, this is just an example to show you guys what you can do to get a little bit more specific. So you can recolor and emphasize them in order to make them stand out from the rest of your drops. And you can see here, we've got a couple already on the ground. And then you can also reorder and move them around, and you can see how the priority of the items changes and what gets hidden and what doesn't get hidden. I had an axe there showing in light blue because it had the affixes that I was looking for. However, it was an axe, so I ended up moving the types of items, the weapons that I removed. I ended up moving that higher up on the list, and I went ahead and hid that axe. Another great rule to add to your general filter is going to be showing all unique, set, and exalted items. You may want to tweak this a little bit, but it's a great one to have at the start because you're going to want to see all of those items, even if they're for other classes. So we're going to set up the very easy rule that says show rarity, exalted, unique, and set. Now, once you get even further into the endgame, you can put rules on top of that that will highlight specific uniques or specific exalted pieces that are very tailored to your build, and that way you can make sure to save those. The next general rule that we're going to set up is going to be for personal and experimental items. These were added into the game back in November, and these are items you're going to find throughout the campaign in those one-shot chests that you can find around the areas or in some of the monoliths, and they have very unique affixes on the experimental ones, and then personal ones are kind of like lesser versions of uniques, so you want to make sure to call these out when you do see them. Now you can just show them like I did did here, or you can actually recolor them if you want to make them stand out even more. So that is our very simple loot filter, and one that I would recommend setting up, especially after you choose your mastery and you're getting more skill points and more loot and you're progressing further through the campaign. So let's switch up the loot filter, and I'm going to show you guys my basic loot filter. This is kind of what I set up for each one of my classes. I duplicate it and then make it very specific to my own build. You'll see a lot of similar rules that we just set up in the other filter. However, there's a few more very specific rules that I add for my build. The first one recolors any items that have specific affixes. The first one highlights gear that has at least one affix that is at tier 5 or above. Tier 5 is the max on regular gear. You need to have an exalted piece to go higher than tier 5. So this is showing me if there is one affix that is maxed out that I'm really interested in for my build. The next one above that is going to recolor if the piece has any plus skills for my build. So plus skills into skeletons, golem, rip blood, etc. And then this next one is actually going to look at all the affixes that I'm interested in for my build, and it's only going to recolor that loot when I have at least 3 of these affixes on the same item, which makes it a perfect piece for me. And it's also going to make sure that each of those individual affixes are either tier 3 or above. So they're pretty high up on the tiers already. You can also say a total affix tiers of, and then put a total there. So if I wanted 3 affixes, and I could say a total of 9 tiers or something. So you can change it that way as well. You can also specify the rarity below there in a different condition. And then another rule I have here is specifically for idols only, because idols can get kind of overwhelming with all the different options there are, and idols don't have tier ranges. So you can't say, show me only idols that have a higher tier, even though they do have a range to their attributes that do drop. So I go ahead and limit it to only my desired attributes. Moving further up into the pink colors here, I always try and recolor hyper rare affixes. There are about 8 to 10 of them that you can select that are very rare to get. And so these are just marked to be shattered in the forge. So I can add those shards to my inventory. So I'll show you here real quick which ones those are. We've got hybrid health. We've got a few potion ones. We've got ward gained on kill, hybrid stun avoidance. We've got some leech. I also added the new critical strike avoidance one. I don't know why it says of fortification there at the bottom, but either way, you want to put shards that you're really interested in seeing. It doesn't even have to be just the hyper rare ones. If there's ones, if you're starting out in a season on a fresh character and you want to make sure you're collecting shards for the affixes that you want, add those in there. And then next up, I've also got class affixes. So I want to make sure that I am highlighting any class affixes that are tier 5 or higher, so max tier basically. And I want to make sure to try and pull those off because those are pretty rare as well. Obviously, the more loot you get, you can also toggle some of these rules off. And this is just to give you guys an example of how I would start out with a loot filter for a specific build. So you can see we have the show all unique, set and exalted. However, above that, I'm going to go above and beyond and recolor some exalteds with the specific attribute that I want in the exalted slot. So exalted items have 1 or 2 affixes that are higher than normal. So they go above the 5. They can be either 6 or 7, I believe. And so I'm looking for the exalted perk to be the attribute that I want. And that is like the perfect loot drop for me. So I want to make sure to recolor those so that I can get excited when they drop. All right, last up, we're going to go over how to copy, paste, or import a loot filter from another website or another build that you guys may find. We're going to head over to lastepochtools.com, an amazing resource for your builds. They have build guides and they crawl YouTube and the forums for builds as well. So it's a great way to just filter, get some ideas, see how the community is setting up their builds, and even get full-on complete complete guides if that is what you're looking for. So we're going to go into a paladin build here, and I'm going to show you guys how to pull the loot filter. So you're going to want to click on the build planner link for that build, and you'll see you can check out the passives, the skills, the loot, all that good stuff, but you want to look for the loot filter over here on the left side. You're going to click that loot filter. You can give it a title. I believe it's going to reset this title anyway, so it doesn't really matter, but we're going to say Paladin Season 1, and it's going to tell you all the things that it's including in there. Now you can change this slightly, but I just usually leave it as what it is. And there are those valuable affixes that I was mentioning earlier that I add in my build, so you can check that or not. But it's going to give you two options at the bottom: copy to clipboard or save to file. Now, copy to clipboard is way easier. Obviously, some files, if people are not using Last Epoch tools, they may just have the file, so I'm going to show you how to do that as well. However, to copy and paste, all you have to do is click copy to clipboard, and you're going to import a filter and paste from clipboard, and that is literally it. The description is going to give you that link, so you have that saved now. You can go back to it whenever you want, rename it to what it is, and that's it. There's your loot filter, and now you have a better idea of what some of these rules are doing so that you can turn them on or off, and you can adjust them to fit your build. Now, Last Epoch Tools does a lot where they recolor into different rarities, basically. You can see in here a lot of the rules that we already set up previously that I showed you guys how to set up, but Last Epoch Tools recolors items and kind of goes up in rarity, so they will get more specific and more specific. So what you can do with their loot filters is, once you start getting enough loot in your stash and on your character and you're comfortable with that, you can start to uncheck the lower rarity ones. So in this case, the blue ones are all the way at the bottom. You could start unchecking the green ones, etc., as you go through the game and you want more specific, better loot. The other thing that you can do with loot filters is set a character level dependency. So you can see that Last Epoch Tools does that as well, where they say show all items until character level 5. So if you're using this from the get-go, from level 1, this is already going to just show everything to level 5, and then the loot filter is going to kick in. And then lastly, if you want to import a filter straight from a file, all you have to do is click that open filter folder there in the top right. It's going to open the folder where all the filters are, and then all you have to do is just drag and drop your XML file into that folder. Super simple and easy to do it either way. However, the copy to clipboard, you don't even have to download anything on your computer, which is amazing. All right, guys, that's it for the loot filters. I tried to put something in there for everybody, the brand new players and for the more experienced. So I hope you enjoyed that comprehensive look at loot filters in Last Epoch. If you have any questions, put them down below. I want to say thank you so much to my YouTube members and subscribers for supporting me. You guys are the best, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.